Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you for being with me today. Hello my friends and welcome back. Today we will be continuing with our investigation into the start and pause macro. Here is an application of it. Is a bouncing ball, the soccer ball model. You can change 3 parameters: the speed of the ball, let's make it much bigger. We can increase also the gravity. Let's slow it down. So now the ball is very heavy. We can also, what was it, that 4 I believe, increase or decrease the loss in the walls during the bounce. Let's make it 0. So now the ball essentially experiences no loss. Or we can increase the loss. How is this done? There is a start-stop macro right here. So start, pause, and this macro calls the main loop. So the main loop is a second macro that is being called from this start pause or start stop, and essentially there's a fairly simple physics. I apply the 3 laws of Newton, the classical mechanics, and simulate the flight through the air of the ball. Actually there's no air here, it's just vacuum kind of. It also models rotation. So when it hits the wall with a certain tangential speed, the wall would give the ball a certain rotation. And this being said, let's go and continue our investigation into the start-pause macro. Let's develop it even more. So because of this, let's take the sheet number 1 and copy it. So move or copy, create a copy, move it at the end, and let's rename it sheet 2, okay? 2. So first let's go over the previous tutorial, and I have a little PowerPoint here. So in the previous tutorial we discussed how to write a macro. It starts with the word sub, then give it some name, your name. Make sure you don't use a hyphen, is interpreted as a subtraction. Open and close parentheses without anything in it. There are certain cases where you put an argument or a multiple argument here. Then you write code inside, and then end sub. This is the end statement. How to reference cell in a workbook. You reference by writing range, open parentheses, open quotation mark, put the name of the cell, R7 whatever it is. R represents the column and 7 represents the row, and then close the quotation and the parentheses. Or even simpler, you write the address of the cell R7 in square brackets. Also we build a macro which increments the value in a cell by 1, and this is the syntax: sub, the name, which is count up in this case, parentheses, and then you put b10 is equal to b10 plus 1. Loops in VBA. The simplest loop is a do loop. It starts with a do and it ends with a word loop. So this is the syntax. Inside you put code. There's a more advanced form of the infinite loop, is the conditional do loop. You add the word while, do only while a certain condition is true. Logical condition, okay? And then you put is exactly like the previous one, but this will allow you to stop the loop when this condition is not true, is false. So you can attach that condition to a certain button to change it from a true to false, and then the code will stop. This next example here, do while the value in B7 is the word running, the text running, and then you do the same thing. B10 is equal to B10 plus 1. Add do events which allow the loop to update the chart if you use a chart every loop cycle, and also allows the loop to pay attention to other things that happen in the worksheet, such as input commands from the user, maybe hotkeys or click on buttons. Otherwise, if you don't have this, the loop will just blindly run forever and you have to hit escape, maybe crash the whole program. The start-stop macro. This is again an outline of what we did last tutorial. You call it start pause, okay, or you can call it or stop, start, stop, or on, off. Sometimes I call them all these names. You can call them anything. Start-Pause macro has two blocks. One is the toggle block, essentially is attached to a button, and when the button is clicked, the macro will change the value in a certain cell, in this case B7, from running to stop or vice versa. If there's a certain value in the cell, it will change to the other one and can be only two different situations. So this is it, is a if statement. And the if statement controls the value in the B7. The value in B7 controls the running status of the loop, which can be either running or stopped, which is a do conditional loop. If B7 is equal to running, the text in B7 is running, so do while B7 is equal to running. Then you increment B10, the value in B10, and then if not, you stop the loop. This is a loop. Also, you add do events. I told you before, do events is a very important, one of the most important thing in animation. Do events is a refresh style function used in any display loop. So any loop that is not pure calculation, even if it's only calculation, sometimes you want to be able, the user, to stop the process. So that's why it's good to put it in cycle of the loop. However, if you are sure you never have to stop the loop and you want super fast execution, you leave the do events out. That's what Microsoft says. This is their official description. Yields execution so that the operating system can process other events. And this is what I say, we need this in animation. We need it in animation to make sure the charts are refreshed during each loop cycle. We also need to be able to use hotkeys, that's why we use do events, or control buttons during the loop operation. Otherwise, we might not be able to use them. General advice from the previous tutorial, and I'm gonna bring this up in almost every tutorial. Don't memorize the syntax for the most part. I mean, you're gonna remember something and you're always gonna know a little bit more, but you're gonna develop a sense rather than memorize. Use Google or copy from the previous file, from previous files. I recommend you create an Excel sheet, an Excel workbook with maybe 20-30 examples of the main components. And there's not a lot. You can do gigantic, very complex animated model, knowing, say, 20 different tricks. You put them there in a very simplified and isolated case for each of them, and then copy and paste. Also, you can use record macros. We're going to talk about this. Or even better, use a combination macro recording and Google search to clean up the macro you recorded. Because whatever you record, whatever you get, even Google search results are very dirty, I call them. I mean, they have a lot of stuff that you don't need. Like I said, they can be 10 times even more than that, at least 3 times larger than they should. And also keep the macros as slim as possible. So let's now go and continue our journey here. So if we look here, we see there is an element of toggle. The macro itself doesn't have memory, but you can make it to have memory. And I show you how. So in this case, we didn't use the memory to memorize this toggle variable. Let's call it a text variable, running or stop. This is like a text variable that varies between running and stop. It has 2 values. But we can use a certain variable inside the VBA, so we don't need to write in a cell. This is important when you want your animation not to have anything to do code-wise with a worksheet. And this is okay when you have a very small number, like a few elements of memory. If you have tens of thousands or millions, you have a certain wireframe with thousands of nodes, you need to use a worksheet. I mean, you can put it in the code, but it's just more complicated. We will do that later. Let's implement this rather than this memory effect, not in the worksheet, in a cell, in cell B7, but in the VBA code. So we copy this, we come here, sheet 1, developer, Visual Basic, and we are in sheet 1. So we need to declare a variable. So I recommend you to go to Google and type how to declare a variable in VBA, and just spend a couple of minutes look in general. Since I used it recently, I remember it. Okay, so dim comes from dim. Let's give it a name. Let's give it a name. The name toggle. No. Loop state. Loop state as Boolean. And Boolean means logic. A Boolean variable has to. There was a mathematician. Let me see. George Boole, okay, and he developed some of this logic theory, helped establish modern symbolic logic, and whose algebra and logic now created Boolean algebra is the basic design of digital computer. Okay, so this guy, dim loop state, this is a name as Boolean, and then instead of this, check this out, this is very important, highlight it and say insert, edit, replace. So we will replace B7, okay, with state. So we replace B7, you replaced in three places, okay. And also, instead of B7, also we should have replaced it here, loop state. Now, if we didn't declare it here, loop state, and just use this, it would still work, but it would not preserve the memory of loop state variable. It would be an implicit variable declared locally within the macro by the program itself, and it wouldn't have the power, the memory power of this loop state that we declare it here. Otherwise, I usually don't declare variables. It just makes it very simple. And again, if you work in a company or you are under a certain rule, do whatever they tell you. They tell you to declare all variables, declare all variables. They tell you to use option explicit, which forces you to declare everything. Use option explicit. I don't. I like to have everything slim, and being slim, even if I forget something, if it doesn't work, I have any problem, I can see it, rather than declare a lot of things and waste a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of good disposition, turn it into bad disposition, handling a million variables. And we will talk more about variables, how some of them we need to declare them, like in this case. And check this out. I'm coming here, I delete this stop, we don't need it anymore. Wait, something doesn't work. So start pause if loop state is running. Okay. So it's not running. Loop state cannot be running or stopped. It can be only true or false. So we go here and say edit, replace running with true. Okay, replace all, replace stopped with false. You see, you have options to choose. Replace it in the current procedure, in current module, in current project, or in selected text. In this case, I use selected text. Replace all. Okay. So now check this out. I'm coming here back to the worksheet. It still doesn't run. Let me see. Oh, I know why it doesn't run. Because we don't need to call it differently, but let's call it differently because we don't need, because it is in a different sheet. But if we call it 1, it's better to identify them. We go in this sheet, start, stop. Okay, so this is start, stop. Let's call this 1, okay? Let's call this 2, okay? And then if we have more, we'll call it 3, 4, whatever. Start, pause, and then we go here in the first sheet and say assign macro, we go with 1. It's not automatically updated. Okay, so if we update the macro name, we need to update on the bottom. So now you see it's running, it stops, runs. Now we go to the second one, assign macro. Okay, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And this is the end of the second tutorial about the start pause macro. We're coming back and I will show you more tricks about the same procedure. and then I will show you some applications. I have my general philosophy is learn a little bit by experimentation, don't memorize, and by redundancy, which means repeat, repeat, repeat. Go deep into this a certain procedure that you learned. The thing is very small. I mean, compared to other YouTubers who make a whole, I don't know, write a whole novel in a tutorial. No, you need to learn a little bit every time. Let's say over 5 tutorials, you learn a little bit about it, and then you really know it. You can apply it in various situations. Like a famous martial artist once said, I'm not afraid of the master who knows 1,000 techniques. I'm afraid of the master who knows one technique and knows it well. And that's why we are going to learn a few tricks. I would say somewhere between 50 to 100 max, which is less than 1% of the whole VBA. Maybe 1% of 1% of the VBA. And with this, you can do amazing applications. If once in a while, maybe once a year, twice a year, you don't know anything, you don't know something, it's very difficult, you go to any forum, you go to Mr. Excel, whatever, and place your question there. If in, let's say, a week you don't get a satisfactory answer, log under a different username or ask a friend to put an answer to your question, but an answer that is completely wrong, something ridiculously wrong. And then 10 people will rush to correct that guy. So no matter how difficult your question, you can get an answer. And this being said, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I will see you in the next video.